it's hard because it's like overcompensating for like.
Kia team, welcome to the Wholesome Half Hour. I'm Saeran and I've got Jordan joining me today on this side. And today we're going to talk a little bit about getting past disappointments, a lot of stuff like that. Life has kind of been thrown into disarray with the whole situation. And I think Jordan has some insight to offer us on that.
Yeah, what's poppin', guys? How are you? Yeah, I was just on our Instagram for the first time earlier, and I noticed that someone wrote in saying that her French exchange got cancelled, which is obviously pretty gutting. And I've definitely been there and feel that. Welcome to the club, man. So yeah, got some. We can talk about all that. It's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's been like what's your past 2 months been like? Because I hear it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Oh, mate, whatever. Just in terms of what can go wrong on your year abroad or your exchange, global pandemic is pretty high up there. It's
Yeah.
I can honestly not think of much else that could go wrong aside from like a nuclear fallout. But even then, like I think Europe, mainland Europe, would have been safe. No, I didn't. Also within that whole pandemic thing, pretty much everything that you could imagine that could go wrong also happened as well, including getting expelled. That's the whole story. Getting coronavirus. That happened. If you look onto the Ministry of Health website and you click cases from Austria into New Zealand, there's one case, and it's your boy. So that's not ideal. But no, I'm fully recovered. So I'm one of the success stories on the
Mm.
on Jacinda's uh, addresses. But yeah, no, 2020's been the Judith Collins of years, mate.
I mean, it's good that you've recovered. It's good that you're staying locked down in your house, I assume, like all of us.
Absolutely. I've not had physical interaction with anyone apart from the New World cashier for about 5 weeks now, I think. So yeah,
Oh, that's life. You've put together this pretty good slideshow for us. Nice font choice
yep.
there. Do you want to walk us
The
through
Comic
this a little
Sans.
bit?
Yep, that was just for you. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So it's good to be back talking to you guys. I think this is my first time on the podcast in quite a like couple of years now, I think. But so that's cool. Um. Yeah. So the first live got here is just a meme I found on TikTok, which is when you're living in the 20s during a global pandemic with the stock market in a recession and the girl you love will never love you back. That was quite a powerful TikTok that hit quite close to home for me. Funny enough, you know how iPhone can tell you how much time you're spending on apps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm averaging about between 2.5 to 3 hours on TikTok every single day since lockdown started. So yeah, for my Great Gatsby English enthusiast out there, you'll notice that this quote isn't actually entirely accurate. The Spanish flu happened in 1918, and the stock market actually didn't go into recession until 1929. But it's a similar thing. Interesting enough, the past two, so 1920 and 1820, both had pandemics. There was a Spanish flu, then there was
Yeah.
like the plague or something. And yeah,
I mean, it is
so I
kind
thought that
of
was quite.
just like if you, I'm sure some people have done this, but if you like search, like the classic one is the Bill Gates one, like Bill Gates pandemic, like
Yeah,
people have been like talking about like this is going to happen for like years, but like just
yeah,
no one paid attention.
oh, 100%. But yeah. So if although I think it's definitely quite unprecedented. People say it's an unprecedented time and stuff. I think it's unprecedented for our lifetimes,
Mm.
definitely, and probably most people's. But it has happened before. We will bounce back. Stock market will bounce back if you care about that, I guess. And a girl will love you eventually. I hope, or at least mum tells me. So if Gatsby can get through it, well, actually he didn't get through it, so maybe look at that for a don't look at that for inspiration. But we will make it through. And TikTok and memes are quite a good coping mechanism that I don't think they had in the 19 or 1820s.
I don't think
But
so.
yeah, my first real slide um, is something that I actually read about in a book by Mark Manson, who wrote he's written two books. One, The Subtle Art of Giving an F, and also the second one, which is a book about hope. And it's a really good book, really well written, and also applies quite well to the current situation. And in it, he talks about the difference between the thinking brain and the feelings brain. He kind of conceptualizes our rational kind of thoughts and logic and stuff, and our feelings, which are pretty irrational. If you're feeling down or feeling hopeless or feeling angry at the world or whatever, been there, it's not a rational, logical thing, and it's important to realize that. So I think, so for example, some people I've seen will talk about how like a lot of our problems, like not seeing our friends for 5 weeks, or being in lockdown, or having your French exchange cancelled or whatever, are quite small problems in the grand scheme of things compared to a lot of people who are suffering quite badly. And therefore they're kind of less valid. But that's I don't think that's entirely true. And also I don't think it's helpful to feel that way. I think it's important to separate what we know rationally, what we can think. Like I'm actually quite grateful to be in a country that's doing really well. Even my exchange got cancelled. I'm healthy, my family's healthy, etc. I know those things logically, but I can also still validate the kind of negative feelings I have, like I'm angry that virus cancelled my exchange or my French trip or whatever, and had to say goodbye to mates and stuff like that. That sucks. I mean, you're allowed to kind of feel, like poo for a bit. Would you have you kind of seen that, like people not really allowing themselves to kind of feel?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's this. I guess, especially if you hang out on certain parts of Instagram, there's definitely like there's definitely a like discourse or chat going on that like you should be grateful for what you have, and like if you're not sick and your family's well and stuff, like you have nothing to complain about. And yeah, there's a lot of legitimacy to that. Like there are a lot of people who are in much worse situations than a lot of us. Like if you're in certain countries where you might not have access to a good health system, or you might have close family who's infected, like of course that's horrible, but that doesn't mean that your concerns and your feelings aren't valid. It's just like you shouldn't just brush your feelings aside just because you're not in like the worst possible situation. Like it's okay to feel down about that.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's quite ironic. Before I left for my year, I like in the week before I left, I had went to the doctors for a blood test, and when the nurse on the day was like, "So are you worried about this whole coronavirus thing?" At this point, it was just like a quite small thing in China, and I was like, "No, not really, not that worried." And she was like, "Yeah, don't be, like it's just the flu, like it won't even bother you." And it's kind of ironic how that's that's snowballed. That's no longer applicable. So when I obviously when got the word that exchange is cancelled and to come back immediately and stuff, had to say goodbye to friends. I think whether when you talk to any exchange students been to Europe and say that changes their life and all that kind of crap, one thing is true, that like you do make like real good friends and you have like a really like intense great time and stuff, and then when you leave it's pretty brutal. So to come back early and because of a virus is pretty crappy. And so I was real pissed off like quite some time. It was pretty dark, but reading this book and kind of conceptualizing it in this way kind of helped a bit, because the example he uses is that when we we either kind of get angry at ourselves, or like we get, miserable and depressed and kind of down on ourselves and beat ourselves up about things. Or we get kind of angry at the world, like, oh, that's unfair. I shouldn't, this shouldn't have happened to me. Why me? This kind of thing. And that's that kind of conflict arises, he thinks, and he's just a dude who wrote a book. So, but I agree with him that this kind of conflict arises when we either don't legitimize what we're feeling, even if it is irrational. Like, you're allowed to kind of be mad, or you're allowed to feel down. We either don't do that and just try and like be grateful, or think about other people in Italy or USA right now. Don't be so, don't wallow, kind of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Or we either don't rationalize it, where we kind of don't try and be grateful, or don't try and see the positive, or don't try and make future plans to get back to where we want to be, and just wallow in our self-deprecating or miserable thoughts or whatever. So I've quite enjoyed going for our daily allocated walks up in a hill, and just kind of people watching. There's a spot in Saeran Park where I live, where you can kind of look on top of this hill. You can look down on people. You can watch people in their gardens and stuff, which sounds a bit weird when I say it out loud, but it's quite cool, kind of seeing people.
It is interesting lives. Getting to know the neighborhood that, I don't know, I've lived here for at least, I think it's coming up 10 years now, and I have walked in streets that I've never been in, and it's really strange. It's like 2 minutes away from my house.
Saeran Park is actually developing now. It's spreading north, I think, and so new roads are opening up, and also land that is it's completely deserted, no roads, whatever, is now accessible from you can climb up hills and stuff. Right. So I've been having a full on hiking thing, and it's quite good. I'll be honest, I'm not really haven't really been that big into journaling or meditating. I've seen that on YouTube and tried it once or twice, but I've never got the hang of it. But it's quite good. I found to just go for a walk and just kind of communicate, which people kind of refer to as check-in sometimes, with yourself, and be like, okay, how am I feeling? Feeling pretty stink. That's all right. But at least, here's the silver lining, and here's kind of some future plans, and here's what I'm not going to do because this makes me feel worse. For example, I decided pretty early on I wasn't going to re-enroll back into university. I was going to take the year off as a gap year if need be, and go abroad again next year, try again. That made me feel a lot better. Just kind of thinking about ways in which I can kind of rationalize and plan ahead, and allow myself to feel stink, but also make sure to think as positive as possible, and to be grateful for as much as I can. So that's what I've been up to.
Yeah. Does that tie into your mindfulness slide that you've got here?
Exactly. Well, actually, the next slide is this one, the Fat Thor, which I saw. Not much to say about this slide, but I just thought it was quite it was quite funny. But this does actually tie into the whole mindfulness thing, because I was reading I don't know about you, but I've been following Chloe Swarbrick's daily updates. Oh, I love them. Love Chloe. She's sick. And she shared this article, and it was about it was an article by a psychologist or a therapist, and was about productivity and isolation. Right. And one of the first things, and it was quite pertinent for me, at least, and I think a lot of people who I've seen on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, is people trying to be super productive in isolation. And I try to do that because I was like, well, I'm going to try and get the most ideal, healthy, quote unquote, coping mechanisms possible. And it was actually quite detrimental to my mental state. And I didn't actually realize that I was, setting myself quite lofty goals of doing work, doing coursework, learning German. Don't know why I thought that was a good idea from by myself. It's a hard language, man. Doing like these really intense home workouts, going for walks, boxing, doing like hundreds of crunches every day. It was quite, and like eating super healthy and stuff. And it was just not that good for my mental state, for my mind. And that was quite surprising. And it took literally stopping one day and just like lying in bed eating like too many Easter bunnies and watching Netflix to realize that actually I was more stressed than I thought I was, and I was stressed subconsciously, because it was like, even though I wasn't like really anxious, like thinking about like, oh, I'm real stressed, all this kind of stuff, I was actually like, my body and my head was really a lot more stressed and kind of wired than I thought it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was doing a little bit of research into cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and being stressed without actually knowing it. Because I always kind of hated the word stressed, which sounds very like YouTube productivity like guru of me. But like, I hated the word stress. It sounded quite defeatist and like victim kind of thing. But I realized I was actually super like wired and stressed and stuff, just subconsciously. But do you know about cortisol and all that? And
A little bit. I guess the classic thing you always hear people saying is like cortisol's the stress hormone and gets released when we do certain activities, including exercise at some level. But
exactly.
that is sort of the limit of my knowledge.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's just a side note. When I said I was at the doctor's for that blood test, it came back and it was a thyroid. The hormones were imbalanced, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And you, as you so accurately said, and it is responsible for kind of raising our blood pressure and making us real wired and stuff. But it also has quite subtle effects on our whole body and stuff. So like not just the like stress, headache and all that, but I often will be in bed and I'll be like real wired. I'll be watching TikTok for like 1.5 hours and like I'll literally feel like I'm like super like switching from like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and stuff, and like answering every single like notification I get as soon as I get it, or like just like getting really into like politics debates on TikTok, which is just a stupid idea that you just never do. Like if a 16-year-old guy from like America is like actually having a effect on your on your
overall
mental
well-being
state of
and
it, or over
literal hormone levels.
TikTok politics quote, you need to stop and go for a walk or something. But also my sleep was so bad, not just jet lag, but I was just like waking up at like 3 a.m. Before I came back to New Zealand, so not jet lagged, and then afterwards, and then I was sleeping like so long, like until like midday or 1, whatever. So my sleep patterns were all wired. My body, I was real tired. Weird dreams is apparently something. I can't say I got that. Appetite, either eating, like feeling like you're real hungry all the time, or not eating enough, feeling real irritable, which I was. Like things would piss me off, or I'd be real moody for like quite irrational reasons. Attention span, which definitely I had. Like I was struggling to watch a movie without like switching over to like Instagram or like whatever. I think that's why I spent so much time on TikTok, because it's just like 15-second videos. You kind of like go through them. And also finding enjoyment in little things like going for a walk, or reading a book, or doing stuff that you normally like. So I think it's quite important during this time, and especially if you've kind of been real disappointed or feel like you're quite personally affected by this. Obviously, everyone's been affected, and some people have been affected really badly, but also a lot of people, like myself and like the person whose French exchange got cancelled, might feel like you've been kind of personally victimized in a way that is just annoying. Like it's you're not, you're healthy and your family's healthy, but like also it's not just a matter of, oh, now I have to watch TV for a bit, or now I can't see my mates for a few weeks. It's like, you've had to say goodbye to friends, or big plans or dreams have been cancelled or postponed or whatever. And that's, if that's happened to you, I really encourage you to kind of think about if how you're kind of going about your day, and if there are any signs that you might be kind of subconsciously more stressed than you think. But I'm pretty bad at mindfulness, so I was actually going to ask you about that. You seem like a pretty mindful guy, so I was wondering if you had any tips.
Do you have any mindfulness tips? I used to be like big into meditation. I haven't done it as much recently, but even just like mindfulness, like even just like the basic things. And this is it's always the cliche stuff that people talk about all the time. But the reason people talk about it all the time is because like some of these things really do work. Like if I'm like at my desk and I'm feeling stressed, I'll like stop for a minute, just like notice the classic thing people say is like, look at like 5 objects around you and just like look at them for 20 seconds or something like that. And then just breathe. And then trying to like slow down and think of like, just stop and think for a second, like what's going on? What can I do about it? A lot of the time, if you're stressed with like work or schoolwork, one of the best things you can do is like write down like what's the stuff I need to do? What's on my mind? And that way you can kind of download it almost like onto a sheet of paper, and then you can kind of work through it one by one, rather than feeling overloaded because you have your 6 subjects, you have 6 teachers emailing you, and that can feel quite chaotic, and it's normal for that to be stressful.
Oh, I'm a massive fan of the writing down, but I found it doesn't work if it's on your phone. I don't know why, but for me it just doesn't. If I'm writing like to-do lists, or like writing about things that are like going around in my head, writing down on paper is just so satisfying, I think. On your phone, because I'm always on my phone, it just doesn't feel as if I'm kind of downloading it, or uploading it maybe. That doesn't have to have the same kind of effect. So I'm a big fan of writing stuff down. I was watching a YouTube video, and it was about writing down on paper and stuff. And what he was doing was like only writing 1 to 3 things a day, but it was like adding up. Because obviously that adds up. If you write 3 things you want to do, like go for a run, or do this piece of study, or work on this assignment or whatever, or or study your French more or whatever. If you just write like heaps of things, it's quite overwhelming. But if you just write 1 to 3 things a day, it's quite doable, and it's also quite satisfying when you've ticked them off and it's done.
That's still 10 to 21 things a week. Like that's nothing to be scoffed at. And it can be tempting to overload the to-do list and then feel disappointed at the end of the day. Avoiding that temptation where possible is definitely valuable as well.
Yeah, and also like, because one of the obviously, as well as the whole mental stress and like moodiness of coming back and all that, also having coronavirus, not ideal. I was like walking up this hill, and I had like real like tight chest, and like quite had some difficulty breathing, and I was like this on top of just generally being quite a wide, irritable dude at the time. I was getting quite like anxious, like quite quite high adrenaline. But stopping and like looking at nature or whatever, and then breathing real slowly, real deeply 5 times. Love it. Big fan. So those are things that I've been kind of thinking about and trying to do. And also realism and optimism and positive writing off I've got there. What I mean by that is it's important to be realistic. This is a pretty sucky time, and although I thought it'll be over soon, or it's no big deal, which is the flu, or lockdown all over the world will be over and can go back to whatever you were doing before. Although I was thinking at the start, I think it's important to be realistic. Be like, no, actually, like we need this lockdown. It's going to happen. It's a pretty sucky time, but also, it will get better. We can use this time to kind of stop and reflect and think. And even if you don't really want to do that, you don't feel like you need to reflect on much or whatever, we can plan for what we're going to do after this. And if need be, you can write off this semester or whatever, or this isolation as not being that productive. For me, writing off the entire year if necessary, like going in a gap year. But obviously, if you're year 12, probably can't do that. But
Yeah,
thinking about,
I would definitely I would definitely consider just relaxing a little bit and not holding yourself to as high of a standard.
100%. I think it's really important to delegate rest and productivity time. So, for example, especially when you're working at home, especially when you're studying at home, and especially when you're studying at home or working at home while you're stressed, it can be really difficult to segregate productive time or rest time. So what I was watching this guy talk, and he said it perfectly, which is that, if we're always like working on our phones or always like thinking, oh, I should be doing my German homework, or I should be doing my English or maths homework, or I should be studying this or working on this, doing this project, this assignment, it can be quite, obviously it could be quite difficult to do all that from home. It can be quite difficult to do all that, anyway, even if you're at school. But especially when you're at home, it's easy to procrastinate, get distracted and stuff. And so it's kind of like quite hard to escape the feeling of being behind, or feeling like you need to be more productive than you need to, and then you have to, and need to be more productive than you are. And when you're feeling that way, it can be quite difficult to also rest and relax, because it's like another difference between watching Netflix when you're got an exam the next week versus watching Netflix after you've finished the exam and it went well. It's like two very different Netflix sessions. And one of them, like you can feel quite guilty, or feel like you're procrastinating, or feel kind of stressed or mad at yourself for not studying or working or whatever. And then the other is like you feel like you're rewarding yourself, and it's well deserved break and stuff. So I think it's really important to use this time to be productive if you want to, and definitely try and foster good habits and stuff, but also give yourself time to actually switch off and rest, and fully, if you want to sit there and watch Netflix or TikTok or YouTube or whatever for ages, actually give yourself kind of guilt-free time to do that, and not worry about your list of things and goals and your home workout plan that you didn't do today, or your whatever. Give yourself small productive goals that you can feasibly do, 1 to 3 things a day, but then also give yourself time to fully switch off, because I think it's quite difficult to actually do that at home, paradoxically, when you're also got so much work.
When everything's at home, it becomes hard to isolate that quiet time. I guess the other thing I'd say is, I think some people have forgotten this, and one thing to remember is there have been disruptions to NCAA and high school in New Zealand before. When the Christchurch earthquakes happened, a lot of students weren't able to go to school for a few weeks, but it doesn't mean that you have to write off your entire year if you don't need to, or if you don't want to. A lot of students in 24, 23, I can't remember the year exactly, but after the Christchurch quakes, NCE grades actually went up a little bit. It's not impossible to finish high school. The next month or two will be quite disrupted, but you can absolutely keep sailing on through if you want to. But it is important to take that rest and relaxing time as well.
100%, fully agree. I definitely would not recommend writing off the year if you're in school or whatever, but even if you have to write off, travel plans or an exchange, or, even just a trip with your mates or whatever, or a competition people have had to cancel, or sports things or whatever, I think it's important to write those things off as positively as you can. So don't try and be oh, I wish I was, on my trip, or I wish I was doing this, or it sucks that I can't do this. It's it definitely does suck, but there's no point kind of thinking about it and wallowing in what could have been. So I think it's important to just be this is happening, it sucks, and if I'm not feeling as productive as I am, or I don't really have the motivation to study as much as I should be, that's okay. And also, what can I do about it? So can you might, maybe if you had money onto that French trip, you could plan to kind of, put us in a savings account to actually go by yourself to France in a year or two or whatever, or, kind of little things like that. Or if you had an exchange plan, you might want to just be like, okay, this sucks, but I can go on exchange next year, that kind of stuff. Little things like that can have a big effect.
Yeah. We're running out of time here. Did you want to run through your last couple of slides real quickly, or do you want to wrap up?
Yep. Last slide was this quote, not from Aristotle. People think it's Aristotle. It didn't work. Anyway, it says excellence that is on act but a habit. But I think a better way of saying that is just self-improvement and having a pleasant day is not an act but a habit. We talked about this before, so I don't really get into much detail, but I think there's quite I call the Gary continuum, which is a line between Gary V and Gary from SpongeBob, which is like how like disciplined and productive and like intense you are. Like on one hand, we've got the people who are like trying to set themselves real unrealistic goals, really habits that are causing them to burn out, trying to like schedule everything, and and that's good, but if it's making you feel more stressed or more bad or making isolation harder than it needs to be, that's something you should probably take stock of. Or if you're absolutely like staying in bed doing nothing, eating Doritos and feeling miserable, that's probably not ideal either. I think it's important to think about what habits you have. So for example, good habits like going for a walk, which is really helping me, and bad habits like being on TikTok for 3 hours a day, which is just objectively stupid. And I should not be doing that because I just get into arguments with 15-year-old American kids about Trump. So taking stock of my habits and really reflecting and analyzing what I'm doing and how that makes me feel is a big thing. And also showing up for yourself and planning for the future. So doing things today that are going to help you in the future, like planning things to do with your friends, or planning how you're going to bounce back from this, or little habits like maybe doing a little bit of working out or studying or learning a new skill or whatever that is going to make you feel more optimistic to show up tomorrow and repeat the same thing, and actually enjoy yourself and be optimistic about what's going to happen after this is, I think, really important right now. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say.
Awesome.
Except my last slide is
your last one.
My last slide is for my favorite show ever, Avatar: Last Airbender. Uncle Iroh, the absolute goat. Hope is something to give yourself. That's a meaning of inner strength. Saw that on a mug, loved it. Found it on Google. Best piece of advice from the legend himself. If you watch Avatar: Legend of Aang, then you know. If you don't, then watch it over isolation.
I'll consider whether I can put that on my to-do list. But thanks so much for coming along, Jordan. It's great to see you again. It's good to know you're alive and well. But yeah, hope that was helpful for you guys. Definitely, it is normal to be disappointed at this time, and our lives have been disrupted in a way that for most of us we've never experienced before. But hopefully you can kind of leverage some of what we talked about today to kind of keep your spirits up, keep going, and yeah, stay happy and look after yourself. Any closing words, Jordan?
Nah, good to see you guys again. And if you've got any more stuff, I need to get some work done. So if you have ideas or questions or stuff you want to see, then chuck us an Instagram DM or reply to our story or whatever. And yeah, see you guys soon.